Hello there. I've always been of the opinion that Terrans are a greatly underestimated people. Sometimes they're often viewed and sometimes even portrayed as one-note, one-dimensional, scheming, conniving, backstabbing, treacherous, two-faced, lying, manipulative. Can't do swear words within the first 3 minutes rather, of a YouTube video. Insert swear word at the end of that sentence, and that's what they're generally portrayed as. But sometimes we get a gem, a diamond in the rough, literally, baby. At least someone who is portrayed with intelligence and capability and really makes you understand just how the Terran Empire actually does manage to function. And in that case, we're going to explore the personality and motivations of Gabriel Lorca, captain of the ISS Buran, later the USS Discovery, and traitor to the Empire. But was he really a traitor? I have covered him in sort of brief before when I've covered his actual insurrection in and of itself, but this episode is more about a personality profile of the man, the myth, the traitor, Captain Gabriel Lorca. Lorca was a man of immense prestige and power within the Mirror Universe Imperial Starfleet of the Terran Empire. Considered one of the right-hand officers of the Emperor Philippa Georgiou, he amassed great power, wealth, and influence in the Empire. He seemed like a loyal officer. She trusted him enough to have him school and educate her daughter, adopted daughter anyway, Michael Burnham. Something that would be a mistake, fair enough, but superficially he seemed loyal. And he was a loyal soldier of the Empire. Like other supposed traitors before him, his intentions were certainly self-motivated. There's no getting around it. No one wants to become emperor for purely altruistic reasons. However, he did genuinely believe that what he was doing was in the best interests of the Terran Empire, believing that Georgiou was not the leader to take the Empire into the future. We're not here to debate whether or not that was true, merely what motivated him to do it. While schooling Burnham, he developed a romantic relationship with her, an unhealthy one from his point of view, where he became somewhat obsessed. Burnham, however, did not reciprocate these feelings, seeing their relationship as nothing more than a casual fling, not necessarily love. Although she did idolize him and respect him, she didn't love him, whereas seemingly it would appear that Lorca was in love with Michael Burnham. At some point, when he decided that the Emperor needed to be replaced, his likely intention initially might have been to get Burnham to ascend to the throne, but later simply became, I want to be Emperor, or at least he was planning to be power behind the scenes, at least at first. He would attempt a very unsuccessful coup against the Emperor, which would result in a purging of Starfleet by the Emperor out of necessity, as he had many followers. He went on the run, pursued by the ISS Charon in his ship, the ISS Buran. It was eventually disabled, but because of an ion storm and him trying to abandon ship, he was transported into another universe. There, injured, eventually came to his senses, realised what had happened, being quite a sensible, intelligent Terran. Unlike when we saw Mirror Universe Kirk go into that universe, he behaved like a barbarian. Lorca was able to acclimatise, at least put on a facade. He realised that the humans of this universe were not like his people. He wanted to get home, but first he needed to come up with a plan. He assumed his counterpart's identity and eventually got given the post command of the USS Discovery. He behaved much like a typical Terran would do. He was quite willing to bend the rules and ethics to achieve victory. He behaved like a soldier, less a scientist, and was often seen to slightly be surrounding himself with people that he knew. The officers and crew that he posted to the Discovery, including Michael Burnham, who he would maneuver into that position because of his unhealthy relationship and obsession with her, at least her Terran counterpart, resulted in him actually populating the Discovery with personnel he knew from back in his own universe. He got their counterparts, some of whom were not too dissimilar to their Mirror Universe counterparts in terms of their personality, or that could have been a Lorca influence. He did manage to keep up appearances, but as I said, he was willing to do whatever it takes to win, realising the spore drive was potentially a weapon he could use to not only get home, but maybe even use to win his war of rebellion against the Emperor back home. He continued to keep up appearances, actually going as far as to genuinely help Starfleet and the Federation in their war against the Klingons, seeming like something of a patriotic officer, if not a slightly troubled one. This was often chalked up to some kind of PTSD from the loss of his crew when the USS Baran had been destroyed, and he was the only survivor. Which we know is not true, but that's what it was chalked up to. Going as far as one time when a woman that he'd had a liaison with tried to wake him up when he seemingly was having a nightmare. He woke up and it turns out he sleeps with a phase pistol under his pillow and he pointed it at her throat. This was the reaction of a Terran, paranoid, worried that someone's going to kill them. But it was not the actions of a particularly stable Starfleet officer. But as I said, this guy ain't your typical Starfleet officer. When he finally, after achieving a pretty decent victory over the Klingons by destroying one of the most powerful ships in the Klingon Navy, the sarcophagus ship. That's my dog barking in the background, you might be able to hear. Don't know what he's barking at. Maybe he misses the sarcophagus ship. And he doesn't. He has no idea what that is. He's a goon, he probably wants feeding. Anyway, that's that aside, out of the way. Lorca would eventually use the discovery to return to his own universe. There, he would trick the crew into sort of thinking they got there by accident, renaming the ship the ISS Discovery. He would get Burnham to present him to the Emperor, with all the intention of getting aboard the Charon, freeing his followers and continuing the coup, which he did exceptionally well. He was willing to put up with hours in a Terran agony booth, something that is beyond torture. It keeps you alive. It causes intense physical pain but prevents you from losing consciousness, constantly shifting the agony around the body to prevent you becoming used to it. The agony booth is a particularly nasty invention, probably one of the worst things the Terrans ever created. And he was willing to endure that. He got his people out and they would then basically take the ship near enough. He would be successful in overthrowing her government to a degree, but would eventually be killed thanks to the Prime Universe's Burnham intervention and Emperor Georgiou impaling him with a sword. He would then be jettisoned into space and be burnt up in the core energy being created by the ISS Charon's spore drive. There is always the possibility, because of the nature of the mycelial network, that in reality he was simply absorbed into the mycelial network and could be reconstituted, because, you know, who knows what the mycelial network is truly capable of. But that would seem to have been the end of Lorca. Now, what do we learn from him? Was he a patriot? See, he believed what he was doing was in the best interest of the Empire, because he believed that strong leadership was needed, and the Emperor was too busy consolidating. She was too busy building a luxury palace to fly around in space and not even living on Terra itself. She wasn't amongst her people. He was popular amongst Starfleet and amongst the civilian population of the Empire because he was a war hero and he was very public. He was very outspoken about his beliefs and he was very interactive with the people. Whereas the Emperor was seen as aloof. Many didn't even know what she looked like. Starfleet ships weren't even allowed to approach her flagship without permission. You couldn't even locate it. It stayed at a distance, always keeping people at arm's length for protection. Yes, she was brutal, but that was not unusual. Terran emperors were often quite brutal. There was nothing particularly surprising about her behaviour in that regard. His motivations were because he came from a sort of lower family. He'd achieved great things and he saw the Empire perhaps from a different point of view. He saw it from a point of view of, as he once stated, that 100 years earlier his family had run a business making fortune cookies. Many of the things he references about his past, his admiration for certain people in history such as Elon Musk and other such things, were intended to be giveaways that he wasn't wholly the man you knew him to be. For example, he, like all Terrans, was a bit more sensitive to light than a Prime Universe human, and he took injections in his eyes to help him cope. These were all subtle hints to what was actually going on without blatantly saying it. And it's not known if the Prime Universe or the Mirror Universe, to be honest, or perhaps both ancestors were actually running a business that made fortune cookies. It's likely that both did. But he definitely came from more humble origins, and as I said, that probably gave him a slightly different perspective on the empire than perhaps someone high-born like the emperor. It also made him popular. He also demonstrated loyalty to his crew. His obsession with Michael Burnham was ultimately his undoing. He never should have basically had the Prime Universe Burnham around him at all. He didn't need her. Not really. His plan, he was smart enough that another plan could have been used. He was in love with Burnham, and his Burnham was gone, and he felt that this was the only one left, but they're not the same person. Not even close. To be honest, the Prime Universe Burnham was far nicer than the Mirror Universe Burnham, so I can see why she was an upgrade. But, you know, she wasn't sadistic and psychotic, and probably would have knifed him in his sleep just for the shits and giggles of it. But all that said, he was not a good man. I've done videos that there were good Terrans. There were good men and women in the Empire. Jen Sisko, Captain Forrest of the Mirror Universe. These were officers and civilians who were actually good Terrans. Even Smiley O'Brien. But I don't think Lorca was. He was not a good man. His actions demonstrated in both universes show those of a soldier who is constantly engaged in what we would consider total war at all times, without any kind of break from it. He was suffering from PTSD, although probably the Terran version of it, which was just kind of, you can't really distinguish it from a normal Terran. He was a violent, aggressive, sadistic person, but he did demonstrate certain positive attributes like loyalty, repaying those that followed him. He knew how to play to the people, whether or not it was genuine or not was irrelevant. He knew how to do it. He was a spokesperson for the downtrodden, perhaps, of the Empire, showing that they can achieve more if they join Starfleet. And there we have a basic profile and overview of him. What do you think of his character arc? I personally didn't see it coming. I didn't know Lorca, because his behaviours as well, he was always aggressive. He was always, you know, a little dangerous. But ultimately, he did the right thing. Yeah, he wasn't above, you know, dissecting an animal alive. He kept a Gorn skeleton in his ready room. Yeah, he kept, you know, live creatures around for study, such as the tardigrade, things like that. But he was a man at war, and that's just how he seemed. I didn't see him being a Terran, because Terrans were always perceived as being this sort of almost unhinged versions of humanity. And this man was patient, stable, loyal, and had many positive attributes, simply that his ambition and his ego perhaps got the better of him. But all that being said, let me know in the comments below what you thought about his character. Do you think it's possible he survived, more importantly, the fall into the Sharon spore drive? Probably didn't, but what do you think? Do you think he could have done? And would you want to see him return at any point? The Mirror Universe one, not just the Prime Universe one, the Mirror. And we're now at the end of this video. I thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, thank you, and bye-bye. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share, and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.